Hello friends, welcome to my channel Together with Abhi. Today we are going to start with a completely new module which is called Virtual Private Cloud. So far what we have studied is about EC2 instance, which helps us to start with a virtual server. Now we would want to install or deploy some kind of an application, let's say a web application on this server. This application would then need to communicate with the outside world as well as certain database or DB servers as well. Now, when we are going to do all this kind of an interaction, we would need some kind of network. So what this virtual private cloud helps us is set up a network. You are kind of developing your own data center. You're kind of developing a network which will make all these resources secure, which will help these resources communicate to each other in a secure way. So let's see how we can do that. There is a service called as Virtual Private Cloud within AWS which helps you to do this. Before starting, sometimes it really becomes difficult for a few beginners to understand this because there are too many entities within VPC which are interacting with each other. That is why what I have done is I've created an analogy that would help you to relate how VPC exactly works. So let's take a look at that first. So as I mentioned to you, VPC stands for Custom Defined Virtual Network. You are defining a virtual network within AWS using the resources provided to you by AWS. Let's say we have an ABC company which wants to set up its network in a particular region. So what would be the first thing that they would do? They would certainly look out for some space where they can set up the entire network. So let's say they came up with some address space in some southern part of India, and they want to set up two networks or two offices in this way. One would be an IT office in Pune, the other would be a corporate office in Mumbai. Now, IT office is one which is of normal, it is not of much importance to you, okay? But corporate office, it holds people who are of really importance or prime value. So no one would want to directly have access to the corporate office, whereas for the IT office, people from the outside world can also connect. So we will have IT office people, resources within IT office are in green because they are reachable by the outside world. Whereas people who stay in corporate office, they are really high management people and they would not need to be directly connected with the outside world, right? Now, essentially, everyone within the office would have some sitting arrangement, would have some address for them to reach out to, right? These are called as the private addresses, something like C1 third floor block 2, C6 fourth floor block 5. But this is not known or exposed to the outside world. No one will contact you like Abhilash C1 third floor block 2. What they essentially would do, they will reach out to a receptionist. Now this receptionist would have the whereabouts of Abhilash Sharma, where he exactly sits. Okay, so what receptionist is doing, it is translating the address which is exposed to the outside world, to the private address, and it will reach out to the exact person at their private address. In this mechanism, what it uses is a router or a router, okay, which essentially tells you what is the route to that person. Is this person even accessible as per the route table entries or not? Okay, so this is how a mail or a message which has been delivered to a receptionist reaches out to someone within the IT office. Now, what about a person who needs to be contacted within a corporate office? Obviously, he is a higher management person. He would not be contacted directly by the outside world. He would have some person like a secretary who would be a mediator in between for reaching out to them. So this is just a very basic example. Now let's try to relate it to VPC, how it relates to VPC. Other than that, there is one more thing about the security. At the both office, IT office and corporate office level, there would be some kind of a security at the office level, right? So this is at the office level, but every person would have some kind of a security mechanism within them too. So this is how we relate it to VPC. Let's see that. Now it is a custom defined virtual network. Again, ABC company wants to set up a VPC. What thing it needs first is an address space. In terms of computer, the address is IP addresses. This is IPv4 or V6. Here we are using IPv4. How this address /16, what does it mean? We are going to cover that in the next slide. But for now, let's suppose we have some addresses, some certain IP addresses allocated to a VPC within a region. Also, please note VPC are specific to region, so you can create it within one region, it cannot span. Okay. Now the second thing is you would need to come up with two availability zones. Okay, one is Pune, the other is Mumbai. So in this case, AP South 1A, AP South 1B, right? We are going to set up a subnet. A subnet, what is that? A network, a part of a network. So VPC stands for a big network. When we are going to divide this network into two, we are actually creating sub or parts of a network. That is why it is called a subnet, and the process is called as subnetting. Essentially what you are doing is the addresses that were totally allocated to a VPC have been divided into two parts. One 10.0.0.0/24, the other is 10.0.1.0/24. Okay, these are called as subnets. Please note, a subnet cannot span availability zones because logically it doesn't make sense. However, one availability zone can have multiple subnets. That is possible. Now, this first one, we are creating a public subnet. What do I mean by public subnet? If in case a subnet is reachable by the world outside, then it is called a public subnet. If in case it is not reachable, it is called a private subnet. So in this case, in public subnet, we would like to keep the instances, EC2 instances on which our application, just like a web application, it is installed. So obviously you would want to directly access this web application, right? But you would not want to directly access a database because database is a very critical entity. No one would want to provide you a direct access to database. That is why databases are capped within private subnetworks, whereas applications, web applications, which are mechanisms of reaching to database, are capped in public subnetwork. Now, when we say subnetwork, they are reachable by the outside world. We need some kind of a receptionist, right? In this case, that receptionist is Internet Gateway. Internet Gateway, as the name suggests, it is a gateway for the outside world, which provides internet connection. So now there is a route table and a router. A router is provided by default when you create a VPC. A router is provided to you. A default route table is also provided to you. If in case within this route table we have an entry which says how a subnet can be reached through internet gateway or it cannot be reached through internet gateway, that depends whether it is called a public subnet or a private subnet. So if in case there is an entry within route table which states that this subnet can be reached to the outside world through internet gateway, then it makes it a public subnet. Otherwise, it is called a private subnet because you do not have any mechanism to reach out to the outside world. So let's say we have a call to an application, then it is first made to the internet gateway. Internet gateway has two things to do. First, it establishes communication with the proper subnet, and secondly, it does a network address translation. So as in case of the analogy that we have seen, here also there would be a public address and a private address. Now no one would know about the private address. That is why some network address translation needs to be done, which is carried out by internet gateway. So internet gateway reaches out to default router. Router checks the route table, whether they have an entry to reach out to some subnetwork or not. Then accordingly it reaches out to a subnet. Now the second thing is, how about DB instances? We understand we do not want to provide internet connection to these, but if in case tomorrow we have a requirement for downloading some kind of patches, installing some patches, making some updates, how will we do that? That would require an internet connection. So that is why we need a mediator. And this mediator in between is called as a net instance or a net gateway. So the way it is going to reach out is this. Now the other thing is network ACL. The way we talked about security at the office premises level, similarly at the subnet level, we have a security which is provided through network ACL's access control list. These lists are stateless and they provide both access and deny rules. The other instance level security that we have already studied in EC2 module is the security group, which is at the instance level. So essentially, this is something that we are going to develop, right? What we are going to do, we are going to create a VPC. Within that VPC, we are going to provide is some IP addresses. Then we are going to create two subnetworks. We will assign IP addresses to those subnetworks. We will create an internet gateway and a route table. If in case we establish a connection to the outside world for a subnet through internet gateway by making an entry in the route table, it will become a public subnet. Otherwise, it will remain a private subnet. So we are going to create a route table. We are going to make an entry. Thereafter, we will launch some EC2 instances in both private and public subnetwork. We will see that we are able to connect to internet on public subnet instances, but not on the private subnet instances. Then to reach out to the outside world through private subnet, we will establish or create a NAT instance or a NAT gateway, and we will see how this can be used to create an internet connectivity, to establish an internet connectivity. So we are going to do all of this in practical in the next video. I hope it makes clear to you how VPC works, how different applications work, how different applications communicate. There are too many entities, and that is why I made use of an analogy. Now, the second thing that we would want to understand is about the address spacing. Many people might know it, some would not. That's why I'm just going to cover it here. So let's say your IP address is x.x.x.x, just in our case 10.0.0.0. However, what does this /8 means? /8 means you are going to fix the first byte. So the first byte is fixed. You cannot change that. However, the rest of the 3 bytes you can manipulate. Similarly, if in case it is /16, that means the first 2 bytes are fixed. You can manipulate the last 2. When I say the last 2 bytes, it means 8 plus 8 bytes equal to 16. So you could have possibly 2 to the power of 16 combinations. So this provides you in total 2 to the power of 16 addresses. Similarly for 24 and 32, in 32 case, you are fixing all the characters. That means just one address is possible. Just a similar analogy, this is called as masking. So if in case we are doing /16, it means we have fixed it.abc. /24 means we have fixed it.abc.pune. You just have the liberty of manipulating 2 to the power of 8 combinations. Okay. So that is again the same thing. The most important thing to note here is while you might have like 2 to the power of 8 comes down to 256 addresses, you would have the liberty of utilizing 256 IP addresses, but 5 addresses are always reserved by AWS for their internal networking. Therefore, even if a subnet might have availability of 256 addresses, it would only be able to utilize 251 addresses. So that is all that I have to tell about VPC today. We are going to do this in practical in the next video. Thereafter, I'm going to cover a video wherein I'm going to tell you about all the critical points. We just have covered on a very high basis, but everything like network ACLs and differences between security group and network ACL. How many, if in case we create a default VPC, what all do we get by default? Points which are important from the certification and interview point of view. We are just going to summarize all of them for easy memorization for you in the future. But firstly, it is very important to understand what VPC means, what it consists of, how to make a secure network, and to see that in practical. So see you in the next video. If you did like my video, please do like it, share it, comment, and please do subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Thanks for your time.